Donald Smith, Deputy Managing Director, Publishing Digital Recruitment at Inspired Selection. Welcome to the London Book Fair podcast. Now, you've been in recruitment for 9 years, but previously you worked in senior positions at various publishers. What made you cross the line?
I suppose in many ways I don't actually think of it as crossing the line, because what we do is niche within book and journal publishing. It seems very much part of the industry. So recruitment on its own is not something I would be particularly keen on, but where it's involved in the industry that I've been in for 20 odd years, I just have a bit of a passion for it, enthusiastic about where book publishing was and where it's now and where it's heading. So for me it's like a little bit of a sabbatical, I suppose. I'm still in a publishing environment.
What makes a good recruiter?
Most people would probably say talent spotting. Anyone involved in the interview process when they're recruiting for a company will kind of know when someone is the right person. A CV can say a lot, a covering letter can say a lot, but sometimes there's a gut instinct. And I think one grows to just recognise other signs.
As you cast your mind back, do you remember being disappointed at your lack of formal training and perhaps the calibre of the people you were working with? I mean, people above you, below you, on your level.
Thinking about it, I would probably say training in the 80s was actually, my memory is very good. I think there was money. Publishing was doing extremely well. From a sales point of view, which I was doing at the time, everybody was buying everything. So I think there was plenty of money for training. Certainly where I was on endless courses training, and a lot of the internal staff were doing the same. But I would say certainly once we got to the mid-90s and the next 10 years, probably a bit of a dearth in terms of training.
Now, of course, when a lot of people think about publishing, they think about fiction and general non-fiction, but a huge amount of what drives the fair, what drives the trade in general, of course, is academic, educational publishing. We've seen at Millen, for example, in recent years, someone come from the academic division to head the general trade division. In a sense, digital publishing has broken down some of the barriers, hasn't it? Because the trade has learned from academic publishing. It's become possible to move from one to the other, hasn't it, and transfer skills in a way that once wasn't the case.
Yes.
Has digital made it more permeable in the sense that that you can
yes, I would say
side
digital's had a huge influence on blurring the lines between the different kinds of publishing. I think as we work in companies, we tend to feel that that's what publishing is, and everybody has a slightly skewed view to what they do. But there's no question that if we think about all of the people here at London Book Fair, it's a really broad cross-section of well-known trade publishing houses, STM publishers, academic publishers, and education publishers. So there's a real mix, and many of those people have come from a slightly mixed background themselves. So probably what it is a really good example of skills and experience being shared across the industry.
Of course, the industry as it's configured now is very different from the 80s model. Has it changed for better or for worse, do you think? I mean, is it more professional? Do we have a greater number of skills, a greater general knowledge base?
I think, certainly thinking about the last 9 years, so looking at publishing from a staff recruitment, retention point of view, I would definitely say there's more professionalism. As a general rule, clearly there are a number of small companies where that may be a little bit different. But in the main, people who tend to work for those smaller companies, certainly from an entry level, do tend to go on to work for a lot of the larger publishers. And the skill base has to be really very good. So there's a stronger element of professionalism now than there was in the cowboy days, perhaps, of the late 70s and the 80s.
Are you recruiting at all levels, both entry level and executive levels?
All levels. We would certainly say from entry level through to senior executive levels. Although I think it's fair to say, given the advances in particularly social media, Twitter, Facebook, in the last couple of years, a lot of the entry positions are recruited that way by companies themselves. Generally, I tend to be doing the more senior level stuff, but that doesn't mean that I can't work in a marketing assistant, marketing executive role. From my point of view, I still like to see a little bit of all levels, and I feel that it's important that someone working on senior level stuff still has a feel for what's happening at a more ground level as such.
The big issue with digital, and of course it has been for some time, to what extent do you think digital people can be both recruited and trained within publishing itself, or do you think we're always going to have to look outside the industry for senior digital figures to come in and bring their expertise to publishing?
No, today I would say that's not necessarily the case. People do have stronger digital skills. From my point of view, certainly the industry went through a period of bringing in from the outside that didn't always work very well, because those people were brought in often for extra money. And the problem is, publishing, as I've found it over the last 20 odd years, is about passion and enthusiasm and wanting to be there. Many of those people were lured back by their own industries again within a short space of time. So really the key is bringing in people from the outside with the skills and experience, but also using them in a training fashion as well, because people who work in publishing, in the main, and I'm sure you found this yourself, they actually like it. They enjoy working in that environment. Yeah. It's a combination of creative and professional. When we're thinking about the entry-level people, so that would be people who have perhaps done the publishing course at Brookes, or indeed one or two other colleges and universities up and down the country, they're actually coming with those digital skills. Whereas 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 years ago, people were learning them. But given the preponderance again of social media, then there's no question those younger generations coming in are bringing with them technical skill sets just as part of their normal life.
There are now, of course, a myriad publishing courses on offer, undergraduate and postgraduate. Do graduates bring something extra to the industry? I mean, do you think there's something to be said for the old-fashioned method of learning on the job, an apprenticeship, if you will?
No, I think there's definitely something to be said for it. There's been quite a lot, I guess, in bookseller, other media over the last year or two about perhaps companies trying to get people working for free. There's no question on the job working in those sort of interim type roles. They're like mini apprenticeships. I think certainly companies who offer 1-2 weeks or so to newcomers to the industry is a great thing. I think if it goes on a bit more than that, you need a job, some sort of commitment.
Are traditional publishing skills still important? So much of the emphasis these days seems to be on digital skills as opposed to editorial skills, say.
I think there's an element in all directions. I mean, I think the key word is content. Certainly I can remember 5, 6, 7 years ago working with a number of companies, and the process then was about digitising. So many of the jobs were not really what we would strictly call then publishing jobs, whereas today, of course, they would be. But the job then was to digitise the content into the right sort of format to take us to where we are now. And of course, that's very much a part of the process right from the beginning in publishing now.
Now, publishing, of course, requires many, many skills, but it always attracts English literature graduates who want to be editors. Do you think the trade has been good enough, actually going out at saying to students at whatever level, we need people who are linguists, we need people who are mathematicians? There are any number of jobs in publishing which could attract any number of skill sets. Are publishers good enough at doing that?
Probably in the main by publishing companies, not enough. Certainly as a recruitment company ourselves, and I guess others, we do visit Brookes University, we talk to students prior to them finishing the degree, usually a year or so beforehand, just to give them a bit more information about the industry they've kind of chosen. And given that, it would be fair to say there are fewer jobs than there were 10, 20 years ago because of content workflow systems, smaller sales teams, smaller marketing teams, that sort of thing. Students who go to Brookes or Stirling do publishing postgrads, they've kind of picked publishing as something they'd like to do. So from my point of view, they've already made a commitment, and companies do favour candidates like that, but that doesn't mean that there isn't room for other people to come in.
Now, you're a sponsor of the Chairman's Breakfast at the London Book Fair. You're very involved with the fair. You and your colleagues are going to be around it for the 3 days. What do you bring to it, and also what do you hope to take away from it?
If we look at the overall event, starting off with the Chairman's Breakfast, many of the people who are there are quite influential within the industry. And from our point of view, and certainly from me personally, it's just a really good opportunity, which doesn't happen too often, to get a largish number of influential people together. It's an opportunity perhaps to talk to some of them. Can't get around everybody in the time, but the format, as I found last year, was very good in terms of the tables and the people who were mixed with the tables. I think I coined last year, standing at the fair and thinking, actually, this is LinkedIn Live. All of my contacts, most of them, are probably here somewhere. What a fantastic opportunity to get up to date, to see what people are doing, and from my own point of view, what they'd like to do.
Donald Smith, thank you very much indeed.
Thanks, Liz. Pleasure.